Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here with part 5 of the Murray-Darling
Australia
Basin
is taking
catastrophe.
action of its own. South Australia is setting up a royal commission to investigate allegations of widespread water theft from the Murray-Darling Basin. An independent... It's long been suspicious it's getting shafted by other states upriver, and now it's launched a royal commission. Sarah Dingle from the ABC, here to see Richard Basin.
Sarah Dingle from the ABC at reception.
Counsel assisting the Royal Commission, Richard Beasley SC, has given us his only national interview.
I'd still be optimistic enough to think that people wouldn't just be acting on self-interest all the time, but there's general interest in the plan succeeding and the river system being healthy.
South Australia has launched this Royal Commission because of allegations the $13 billion basin plan is off the rails. Richard Beasley says the Murray-Darling Basin Authority has tried to balance competing interests, but the authority's whole approach could be wrong.
Social, economic and environmental outcomes have been given equal weighting. There's an issue about whether that's the right approach from the authority. My reading of the Water Act is that if you look at the objective sections and what's required to be in the basin plan, they prioritise environmental outcomes.
I asked Mr Beasley what it will mean for the basin plan if New South Wales pulls out.
It'd be a disaster for any state to withdraw from the plan. It requires, as I said, the cooperation of all states. Each state's got a role to play, each state needs to cooperate, but there is an issue as to whether something as big as water should just be a Commonwealth power.
Do you think it should be just a Commonwealth power?
Don't know yet.
We can be pretty sure any proposal to take away their power over water will tank with the other states, particularly New South Wales. Noel Blair says just because New South Wales is pulling out of the basin plan, it doesn't make the plan's failure their fault.
Again, we have met every single target. So this is not on us. We have met every single thing that's been asked of us, and we were acting in good faith.
Actually, when it comes to the basin plan, New South Wales doesn't really get a gold star. About 1/3 of the basin in New South Wales doesn't even have meters, which has led to allegations that irrigators have stolen billions of litres of water. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority, while trying to keep the plan together, has admitted that New South Wales is pretty bad at compliance and transparency. The public knows very little about those 36 engineering projects linked to the vote about to come up before the Senate. Senior hydrologist from the ANU, Professor John Williams, says these projects are no substitute for having more water in the river.
What's being proposed is like watering the petunias. It doesn't return the ecological function into the system that we need. And I feel that amendment and the amendment for the Northern Basin are both attempts to weaken the original basin plan, and they should not be passed.
Together, these projects will cost more than $1 billion. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority has approved all of them, but we don't know all of the reasons why. Now, the Senate has to decide whether to end water recovery for the environment, spend a lot more taxpayer cash, and it hasn't even seen the business cases for these projects. Senator Rex Patrick of the Nick Xenophon team tells me it's ridiculous.
We're about to spend $1 billion of taxpayers' money. We have a right to see what these business cases say. I don't want to have to vote on this particular piece of legislation in the dark.
2 months ago, Senator Patrick made an official Senate order asking the Basin Authority to hand over documents showing why they approved these projects. The authority missed the deadline, but did eventually release about 1,000 pages. Senator Patrick was far from satisfied. He says there's still a lot that's missing, including an assessment of the biggest project of all, which involves changing the rules across 3 states about releasing water from dams for the environment.
The biggest project in amongst the 605 gigalitres, it amounts to about 200 gigalitres of water. There's nothing in the order for production of documents that have been returned to the Senate about that particular project, and that's something I'll be taking up with the relevant minister.
The documents also made it clear there's a whole bunch of detail missing about the rest of the projects. They show the authority requesting that the states flesh out their proposals, and then zero response. So I asked the authority's chief executive, Philip Glyde, what was going on. The Senate called for all documents related to your positive assessment of these projects to be released. Why didn't you give them those documents?
We gave them the documents, all of the documents that were asked for, Sarah.
No, you didn't. The senator who made the order for call of production of documents is very dissatisfied that you didn't provide all the documents relating to your assessment of those projects.
We've explained to Senator Patrick that what he asked us for was the documents that we had provided and that we had prepared. The bit that is missing is the interaction with the final interaction with the states, where the projects, in order to be approved, have to be amended, changed, etc., as we required in those lead up to those gates. And so that's the part of the information that isn't there. The bottom line is, Sarah, that the projects have all been approved. The other information, as I've said, rests with is the responsibility of the state governments. They have that information.
So Philip Glyde is saying it's not the authority's responsibility to fill in the gaps, it's the states. At time of recording, South Australia and Victoria had agreed to send Rex Patrick their business cases. New South Wales had offered him a meeting. Senator Patrick tells me that the Murray-Darling Basin Plan has a big problem with transparency.
And that's why we need to have all of the data made available publicly. Transparency is important, transparency is necessary, and it's got to happen.
The day after I interviewed Rex Patrick, he did receive a letter from the MDBA. In it, Philip Glyde maintains that the authority has provided all of the documents Senator Patrick asked for, but acknowledges that those documents alone don't provide a good picture of how the final projects were assessed. As a result of that letter, the authority has now agreed to give an independent expert, approved by both Rex Patrick and the authority, special access to the authority's files. But that means access to thousands and thousands of pages of documents. Time's running out, and as we record this, they still haven't agreed on who the expert should be. And there are 75 other senators who have a vote on this as well. There's something else the Senate hasn't officially been told. It's whether these projects are even legal. The South Australian Royal Commission has been casting an eye over what's before the Senate. Counsel Assisting Richard Beasley SC warns that these proposals may run counter to the Basin Plan and to the Water Act itself.
If these proposals haven't yet been implemented and therefore can't be producing the results they're anticipated or modelled to produce, but you immediately lower the amount of water that is required to be recovered for the environment, do you lawfully get left with an environmentally sustainable level of take, which the Basin Plan must reflect?
Philip Glyde says politically, the Basin Plan is riding on this vote. He told ABC News that if the projects don't go ahead, the whole plan could collapse.
I think that would see the Basin Plan itself, the political commitment to that from the six governments, bipartisan commitment, that would fall apart.
Let's leave the Senate for a second as it plunges headfirst towards a vote on changes to the Basin Plan which may be unlawful. Lucky them. Let's talk about you, dear listener. At this point, you might be rolling your eyes and thinking, okay, the environment may be getting shafted, but I'm not a hippie, so why should I care? Well, there's another lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes. And what's at risk is not the river system, but a whole lot of mortgages. That's right, I've managed to sneak property values into an environmental story. And yes, I am from Sydney. Remember Marianne Slattery, the former senior public servant at the Murray-Darling Basin Authority? She's now a water expert with the Australia Institute. What really keeps Marianne Slattery up at night is the number of smaller farmers in the basin who have mortgages which may now be looking shaky. It's because of a thing called cap factors, which directly affect farmers' water licences.
So cap factors are a way of comparing water in one valley against another valley.
The Murray-Darling Basin's rivers and valleys have different amounts of water at different times, so there needs to be a way to compare them. Think of it like different currencies. The water in one valley is one currency, and the water in the next is a different currency. The cap factor is the exchange rate, showing what the two are worth side by side.
Yeah, it's exactly the same concept as an exchange rate. If you're comparing currencies between countries, what's your buying power of your exchange rate? How much water are you actually going to get against this licence?
So, by changing the cap factors in different valleys or bodies of water, the government is messing with the exchange rate.
Yes, that's right.
The basin governments set the cap factors. They intend to change them under the Basin Plan, but to what, we don't know yet. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority has been working on this with the states for years, but Philip Glyde says it's still not finished.
We're certainly very keen to get the cap factor questions resolved so that people can have certainty about what's going to be happening. The cap factors matter because it determines the value of the water recovery, the extent to which water has been recovered, and whether or not there needs to be more recovery. And so it's a really critical question to have answered.
Problem is, for a lot of people who have their life's work in the basin, water is money. It's extremely common for farmers to have the farm's mortgage secured over the value of their water licence.
But it has implications for anyone that has a mortgage attached to their water.
As a lot of irrigators do.
Small irrigators will, yes. Yeah.
So small irrigators have the mortgage on their farm reliant on the value of their water licence.
That's right.
And if you mess with the exchange rate of water, you might be devaluing their water licence.
You might be misrepresenting the value of their water licence.
Right.
If the banks are using the government's official cap factor numbers, then we're certainly providing misinformation into the financial sector about what water is worth.
So, how many properties in the basin could be affected by changing cap factors? How many people in the basin have their mortgages secured, at least in part, on their water licence? Professor John Sheehan is an acting commissioner of the Land and Environment Court and a past president of the Australian Property Institute.
I would imagine, given the high price often these days quoted for rural properties, probably more likely around about 70 or even higher than that percentage.
John Sheehan says no one knows for sure because no one keeps the data. I asked the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority and the Reserve Bank of Australia, and they don't keep the data. So I asked Rabobank, a big rural lender, and they said they don't have access to industry-wide information. So they directed me to the Australian Bankers Association. I asked the ABA, and they said they didn't have it either. I'd like to tell you what the stakes are here. There's potentially a lot of properties and a huge amount of money involved, but no one seems to keep the specific information. I also asked the Basin Authority for their estimate of how many mortgages in the basin would be affected by the recalculation of cap factors. They didn't give me any estimate, but this is the response they sent me. Planning assumptions are used to estimate actual water used within a catchment for the purpose of water planning and do not directly influence the value of an entitlement. The ratio of the expected use to nominal entitlement is sometimes referred to as the cap factor. This is different to allocation reliability and also does not ascribe a monetary value to an entitlement. So, what do we know? We know that the state governments are changing cap factors, but we don't know how. John Sheehan says all markets hate uncertainty, especially the property market.
We have to see the fine detail of just what that cap is going to look like and how it's going to be applied, because the uncertainty has to be something which would be perceived as adding to the risk in terms of that as an investment.
Banks hate uncertainty too, and what they do to combat risk is predictable. They'll increase their control over people's assets.
Water tends to attract a greater level of risk, and so therefore the risk perceived by the banks is higher, so therefore the interest rate rises on the water component. It's not uncommon in situations where there's a significant water component in the package being offered to the bank, that what the bank will say, well look, Farmer Brown, have you got any other real estate you could throw into the package which we're going to, which when we're considering your loan?
So you think the banks will start asking farmers with mortgages to throw in other assets as extra security if the water licence becomes less certain?
Absolutely.
Cap factors are also a problem for the environment. If you don't know the true value of a water licence, you may have overstated how much actual water you're returning to the river system.
Okay, we're on the upload limit, back immediately.